weekly dialogue on the very topic, Diaspora and Development. It is a great pleasure and indeed an honor to have available with us respected chair, distinguished speaker, and dear and respected friend. On behalf of GSDS Forum, I would like to welcome chair of today's session, Professor Ajailiu Niumai, who is well known at least for sociology fraternity. She is nurturing Center for the Study of Social Exclusion and Inclusion Policy, University of Hyderabad. Professor Adit has not joined us, and he will not join us because his mother is not well. So we requested Professor Niumai to help us at least about 30 to 35 minutes, and then we will have some discussion. We welcome Professor Meera Chakravorty, Dr. Nopurji, Dr. Sipra, Professor Gianluigi from Italy, Dr. Medha, and all friends co-present here. Let me give a brief introduction to our GSDS Forum. GSDS Forum stands for Gandhian School of Democracy and Socialism Forum, which is a platform to promote understanding of the dynamics of society with the quest for freedom, justice, equality, and fraternity. It focuses on knowledge and dialogue among concerned persons. We organize dialogue on every Friday and invite people from different fields of life to share their knowledge and practices to understand the society in a better sense. I also extend a very warm welcome to Professor Anand Kumar, although he will not speak today, but he has joined us. Let me give a brief introduction to Professor Ajailiu Niumai. As I had said, she is nurturing Center for Study of Social Exclusion and Inclusion Policy at University of Hyderabad. She is also Senior Research Associate in Department of Sociology, University of Johannesburg, South Africa. And she is very active in Indian Sociological Society. She has been convener of RC4, Migration and Diaspora Studies at ISS. Currently, she is member in Board of Governors in ISEC, Bengaluru. And she is trained in Merinda House. She is trained in JNU, and she finished her PhD from University of Ohio, Chicago. And she has very deep engagement with diaspora studies, gender studies, women's issues. So we are very grateful that she has accepted our invitation to share her thought on the very topic, diaspora and development. As you know, India, if we say that India is the country who will rule 22 or 21st century, then India has the largest diaspora in the world, with around 18 million of its citizens living in other country. As you know, diaspora population does not affect our economical condition in terms of remittances, but also political and social public opinion making in terms of transnational politics. So today is a very interesting topic. We got a lot of questions and queries regarding this topic. Particularly many of our students from management school, they have also joined this dialogue to understand this relation. So let us invite Professor Ajailiu Niumai to share her thought on the very topic. You are muted. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gautam. And, thank you for inviting me in for your generous introduction. And also I'm very grateful to the chairperson and of course my esteemed and beloved teacher, Professor Kumar. I feel very small to talk in front of all of you, especially in front of teachers. And of course, my colleagues and also students from different universities. I will not talk for long, but I think we can open up for discussion after I speak for around 15 to 20 minutes. Is that okay, Dr. Gautam?
Yes.
Yeah, I was actually thinking that Aditya himself will be present and we'll have more of an interaction with him. I must say that this is a book which is needed at the moment because, as you rightly said, there is a kind of craze among our young scholars to work on diaspora studies as more of our diaspora Indians migrate. As the number of migration increase, there is also a need for more research to be done about our people who have already migrated. And to talk about this book, Aditya has actually published the content of his book already in various journals and edited books. It's a collection of 9 articles, which he has, revised and rewritten it in an interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary perspective. He also clearly mentioned that diasporic subjectivities are the focus, the main major focus of his book. I find it very interesting and thought that, this book is not only meant for professors, but for young budding researchers, young students, and also maybe useful even for the Ministry of External Affairs and independent journalists who are interested to know about who are this Indian diaspora. The reason why I said this is because he has beautifully defined the concept of diaspora, tracing its Greek origin and how diaspora entails geographical dispersal, but at the same time evokes commonality of culture and community, and also different ethnic groups, people longing for their homeland. So that was the first part that I want to kind of clarify. The second interesting perspective of Aditya Raj's book is to do with how diasporic community attempt to create the mini India in their host country. Like, for example, Devon Street in Chicago is usually known as mini India. And there are so many other mini Indias in their host countries. And this is what Aditya talked about, in my opinion, as to how diasporic community attempt to create that mini India, the home in their host country, and build up the bond, the relationship, the commensality of belonging to one community, belonging to the people of Indian origin in their host country. Now, he emphasized how their subjectivities and the fluidity of diasporic life experience actually make diaspora itself a home. The third point that I want to mention is how there are also Indians who do not fall under Indian diaspora or people of Indian origin or non-resident Indians in their host country. For example, the unskilled labor workers or the semi-skilled workers, like the Gulf migrant workers from Eastern UP, as soon as they reach the Gulf countries under the kafla system, their documents are confiscated. They do not have their passports anymore with them. So and they sign a contract, right? So they cannot think of going back to their homeland, even if they want to. And secondly, they do not have any relationship with people of Indian origin, the PIO, or the diaspora, or the NRIs, except the group of the individuals who went together to work as a semi-skilled or unskilled laborers. And second example is the traffic survivors. Yesterday, I spoke in Gujarat Central University about traffic survivors of Naga tribal girls from the hills of Manipur to Singapore. And as soon as they reached the job recruiting agents and also the employers, confiscated the documents, the passports of these girls. And the girls are not well educated. Most of them are not even class 10 pass. And they are so semi-skilled or unskilled workers. They're trafficked for labor. Some of them are being made to work as caregivers and nannies in Indian diaspora households. Some of them were made to work in bars and spa and nightclubs. They were coerced to work. Now, the point is that this group of workers that I talked about, the traffic girls from Manipur to Singapore, or the migrant workers from Eastern UP, Gorakhpur district to the Gulf countries, this group of Indians, they don't fall under Indian diaspora. They don't fall under NRIs or the PIOs, obviously, So they are I would say they are sandwiched. They are the divergent diaspora. So because they are not bonded with the mainstream Indian diaspora nor contact them, and hence they are diverse from the other Indians in the host country, wherever they are. So in some cases, they have been exploited and they have been given inhuman treatment by their own countrymen and not by other dominant racial groups or any other religious groups, but their own people have exploited them as well. So this is something that I think Aditya did not write directly about them, but he did talk about exploitation of the Indian workers abroad, those especially who are in the semi-skilled or unskilled category. The fourth point that I want to talk about is how Aditya has aptly quoted Rabindranath Tagore, that Indian civilization is like a banyan tree in the context of trying to understand, the way in which our new generation in different countries represent the banyan tree branches, who attempts to find roots and who continue to thrive, who continue to grow, and who also continue to kind of trace their origin back to their homeland, not necessarily their own, because they're not born and brought up in India, but their parents, grandparents, or great-grandparents. They may not have the same level of emotional bond with India, but they do have some kind of relation with India. So he rightly quoted Tagore's, opinion, Tagore's idea of how Indian civilization can be compared like the banyan tree. And of course, he also, in another chapter, talked about Bollywood. I mean, movies, I must say, have a great impact that, really binds people of all castes, religion. And Bollywood manages to do that. And that's where we see, commercial movies particularly, and also the art movies have really impacted the diaspora, and they can feel and have a longing for India while watching movies, or connect with India. And also the kind of narratives that are shown in movies are social realities in many ways. I remember I met a man who's an IIT Chennai product. He's working in he is in 60 plus. I met him in Chicago at this All India, development organization conference in the Institute of Technology, Illinois. This is in 2014, early part of 2014. And this man said a statement that he loves movie, and he clearly said that movies really bind together people of all ethnic groups across the world. And I think what Aditya wrote is very relevant in the sense like how Bollywood or the regional movies, Mollywood or Tollywood or all kinds of movies really binds different ethnic groups together. And another point that he mentioned in the other chapter is how doing research in diaspora needs certain special techniques. And he mentioned his own methodology, which he employed, and narrated how he started his work on diaspora when he was a student in JNU, and then went on to do further studies in Canada with a fellowship. And that's how he started his work on the Indian diaspora in Canada. And it reminded me also as to how I was introduced to the world of diaspora studies around 2007, when Parvasi Bharatiya Divas was held in Hyderabad. And the Ministry of External Affairs have invited Professor Chandrasekhar Bhatt, who happened to be my head of department in the Department of Sociology when I joined as one of the youngest faculty. He just established the Center for Diaspora Studies in the University of Hyderabad. And he asked me to be the rapporteur in that Parvasi Bharatiya Divas. And he was instrumental in introducing me to do research. And I started doing research on philanthropy because I was inspired by the number of diasporic community, overseas Indians who came for the Parvasi Bharatiya Divas and was deeply concerned about India, deeply concerned about the development of this homeland, of their homeland. And I was a rapporteur for a Tamil Nadu section, and which I encountered a Tamil couple who said they want to invest in Chennai and they want to buy land, but they couldn't. And and that really made me really made me think like about philanthropy, about charity work, that people who are successful, especially belonging to the 92 migrant diasporic community, who are considered as a knowledge diaspora, not the ones who went as indentured laborers, or not the ones who went in the 60s. Of course, 60s and 65, mid 60s, we saw Indians who are professionals like doctors, engineers who migrated, but they couldn't be successful, and those who were successful are few in number in terms of statistics, and they were busy trying to buy homes for themselves. They were busy trying to set up their lives, trying to educate their children, trying to buy cars and homes. So they were not in a position to think of India in the 60s, 70s, probably up to 80s. But when LPG came, and when there's an economic change, boom, and then the new IT professionals migrate to the Western world, they make a wealth for themselves. And they also began to feel that, they can invest back to their villages, to their hometowns, to their country as a whole. So we find a new generation of IT professionals, doctors, entrepreneurs coming back to their home in Punjab or in Gujarat or even here in Andhra Pradesh or Karnataka, who wants to rebuild, set up hospitals, set up schools, turn the village, a sleepy village or sleepy village town into a vibrant village, rebuild their villages. So philanthropy, have really kind of give me satisfaction to know more about those individuals who wants to bring about visible change in their home country. And that really connects me to what Aditya mentioned in his book, that, as a student, he went from JNU and then started his journey of doing research on the Canadian Indian diaspora. And of course, I, in my own context, I started doing on Manipuri diaspora. I'm a Naga from Manipur, and I wanted to look at how Manipuri diaspora is different from the other mainstream Indian diaspora. And I really found in my work that, yes, Manipuri diaspora are very different, but because of many factors. And one of the main factor is their physical feature. But of course, they also, to a certain extent, bind with the Indian diaspora because of Vaishnavite Hinduism that they practice. They celebrate Diwalis, they celebrate Holi, they do all kinds of, Indian, they do perform a lot of Indian rituals and ceremonies that you will see in any Hindu homes. And later on, I also did a study on the Naga diaspora from Nagaland and Manipur. And they are very different as compared to the rest of Indian diaspora, in the sense that majority of the Naga diaspora are Christians. And many of them are rooted in the church and the community of the Caucasians and other ethnic communities in the United States. So they are able to integrate in the mainstream American society pretty well, as compared to the other ethnic, particularly the Manipuri community. Now, I would like to say that, Aditya's book is very important scholarship for students, as I said in the beginning, and also he mentioned about how he started to work not only with the professors, but also with the other graduates, his own graduate students. I think through this book, he revealed how important it is for teachers, for professors to network with the students and publish together with students. And I think it is more relevant today in this age of NEP 2020, where, ranking of universities are important, and a whole new range of teaching is different, but we cannot, in this age of NEP, we cannot live in isolation. We cannot write in isolation. We can't do anything in isolation. We have to network with one another. in my opinion, I feel that today's education mantra is networking, and networking with the students, graduate students, in writing, in publishing is very important. And I think Aditya has really shown a pathway for all of us to do that. And of course, he also tried to work on his own community, that is the Bihari community, which I don't want to go into the details, but I would like to wind up by saying that this book is definitely going to be useful for the young budding scholars, as well as researchers, and also even the Ministry of External Affairs. And I wish Aditya many more, many more books and many more success on his in his future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Ajailiu Niumai. It was a kind of excellent presentation, although Professor Aditya is not there, but the way you explain about his journey, being a student of sociology, how he was influenced by Canadian culture, particularly the diasporic culture. And it was a kind of long and very rigorous research that we can find in his writing. Really, this is a kind of invitation for all of us to understand this personal connect, as you have also told about your journey from Ohio, where you found Manipuri diaspora, and you really spent a lot of your work to understand that thing. And diaspora study is not just a study of economics, but also it's a study of cultural conflict also. It is a study of dislocations also. And your study, which talks about terrorism, a kind of human trafficking. So there is a lot of issues around this discourse. It was really a very enriching presentation. And now I request Professor Meera Chakravorty to share some of her reflections on the very issue. And then we'll invite Dr. Sipra and yes.
Thank you, Randhir. Dr. Niumai, it's this factor that you have said is quite, I think, comfortably known by the Indians here. What I was feeling strange about is that when we talk of inclusivity, then they are totally outside this dimension of inclusivity, which is what happens is that the uncertainty that these people face, the unskilled workers and those whose documents are confiscated, then there is a downward uncertainty, and therefore the world happens to be to them in a way that depends little on them. Nothing matters for them. So when this is a thing, how does what are the epistemological and experiential distribution of fear and hope that you can account for? What are the precautionary principles that could be followed? And how do you try to change this unjust fate of this particular group, and think of certain solutions to also bring them in the like having dialogue with their employees, the employer, or some such thing which you could think of to bring in the fate of these people towards a positive direction. Thank you, Randhir.
I request Professor Ajailiu to please note down these queries or questions, and I request you to share your thought on these queries at the end of the session. Yes, Professor Gianluigi, I request you to share some of your reflections.
Yes, thank you very much. Unfortunately, I see that my connection is a little bit without stability. I hope that I am audible.
Yes, you are audible.
Yes, because I had some problems. And no, fortunately, only at the very end of the brilliant exposition, I, of course, would like to thank very much for the brilliant exposition. It was really very interesting. Also because I saw very many analogies with the Italian diaspora, because Italy too is a country of immigration, not now perhaps, but 1 and 2 centuries ago, very much to Europe, very much to America. And I saw very many analogies between the way of organization of Indian groups abroad in the brilliant exposition, and the way in which Italians had tried to organize themselves in the immigration, for instance, to the United States or to other countries all over the world, and of the difficulties which the Italian groups had abroad, not only because of due to the hostility of those who were already living there and which belonged nearly always to the different groups, linguistic groups, for instance, also, but also because of the exploitation of the Italians who were already in the countries who had emigrated before, and the exploitation which was exercised by those who were already there towards those who were newcomers, so to speak. So also this also is an interesting point, and I see very many analogies between the diasporas, the kind of diasporas. And well, I think that well, a problem which perhaps could be dealt with is also whether there is now a different perception of the emigrated people, because in comparison with the past century, in which, for instance, as rights, only individual rights had a validity. Now there is a huge debate, for instance, in Canada, but not also in Canada, also in the US, but in Canada through Kumlika, for instance, about the concession of minority rights or cultural rights to groups which have emigrated to a country and which want to preserve, to save their own culture, traditions, way of living, and so on. So perhaps now there is also this question, which is a question which in certain countries is at least debated on, not accepted, because there is a huge debate about cultural rights, cultural groups, and minority groups, and multiculturalism as source of rights. But anyway, this is debated on also for people who are in diaspora and who want to preserve and to save their traditions, also through funds of the state in which they have immigrated to. And anyway, so it was really very interesting, and I thank you very much for the brilliant exposition. And I am very curious to read the book, because I'm very interested in it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Gyan. Dear and respected friend, let me share the slide. You can see this book around which we talked about. That is Indian Diaspora Study, a collection by Aditya Raj. So I will send you a kind of link where you can find this book. Thank you. Professor Kyan. And now, Miniti Pradhanji, please ask if you have any query. Yes.
I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah. Thank you. So it was a very wonderful presentation by the speaker. So I was just thinking that mostly the two segments of people migrate. One is a skilled or what we call white collar job. The other one is semi-skilled and blue collar job. If you see psychologically, it is only both its lack of the employment in our own, you can say in the native place, or for the lure of a very glittered life, which at the end eventually end up with the, it's not being a horrible thing. So my query is, so setting up more employment opportunities in our local place, whether it will prevent all these conflicts, as you were talking, the cultural conflicts, displacement, many things happen, the result of this migration. Because we see this is inside our country also. Whether that will help. That was my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other friend who wants to ask any question? Please indicate me in the chat box, or you can write your comment in the chat box. Meanwhile, we request Professor Niumai to share her thought on these queries.
I must honestly say that, Aditya would have been the right person to address all these issues, because I'm not the author. I just commented on his book. So the questions that you raised would have been beautifully answered by the author himself, Aditya. Anyway, I will try my best. Maybe the last question I'll start, like how you said lack of opportunity in India perhaps must have pushed this semi-skilled and unskilled workers to migrate. Yes, you're right. Although we do have the problem of brain drain also. The best of the best doctors and IIT graduates love to go abroad and stay there. I guess they have, they have no desire, many of them, to stay back in India. But leaving aside that, straight to your question, yes, definitely, the employment opportunity in India is lacking so much so in certain regions, like, as I mentioned, Eastern UP or in the Northeast have pushed these people. So the theory of push and pull applies to this group of semi-skilled and unskilled workers. And if the government can generate employment opportunities and give social security for this marginalized and excluded people, perhaps some amount of problem that exists will be curbed. And secondly, I think the law enforcement agency should also pull up their socks and do their job effectively, so that the girls, women and men who are, ignorant will not be just pushed out of the country, but they should check in the railway station, they should check in the airports. When group of people come together to migrate, they should cross-check carefully. And of course, the last is, I feel, civil society organizations and pressure groups also have a role to play, that awareness should be created through civil society, NGOs. And of course, we live in the world of social media. So I feel that social media can also play a great role in terms of creating awareness in certain pockets of districts, villages, and communities to be careful of going abroad, and give a pros and cons, and also push the family members to cross-check the agencies, the organizations, or the homes that their wards will be working, and make sure that the address, the contact person in the host countries are also given to the parents for further communication, because usually when they migrate, there will be no further communications in many cases. And for 2-3 years in my research, the traffic victims will not be able to contact with their parents. The parents absolutely have no scope, nor the money to go overseas and find their wards or even contact. So these are some of the things I have in mind. And then coming to Professor Meera and Professor Gyan's question, I think you're talking more of the rights and how to control. I guess some of the issues that I just talked about have addressed to Professor Meera's query also. You see, I want to talk more from my own experience. When these unskilled workers and semi-skilled workers are pushed to overseas, I can talk in the context of Singapore and the Gulf country. The conviction rate is always low. Even if the law enforcement agency could identify the people involved, the conviction rate is the problem. Till 2019, the conviction rate in India is only 10.6%. In 2021 and 22, the conviction rate increased to only 16%, 1/6, which is extremely low as compared to many developed countries. And when the conviction rate is so low, obviously people who recruit and deceive others for profit, you see, they continue to do the same thing again and again because they don't have any fear of the law. And the second thing is that there are laws that deals with this kind of deception, fraud, and exploitation. Like in the context of girls and women, we have the Indian Penal Code, IPC. We have the Indian Constitution. We have the Immoral Traffic Prevention Act of 1856. But these laws becomes irrelevant when our Indians travel abroad. Our Indian law becomes irrelevant. We need to have a bilateral relationship between India and the host country. And most importantly, our citizens, Indians who are semi-skilled and unskilled workers, are not aware of their rights, which Professor Gyan talked about. They are not aware of their own rights. They are not aware that they can go and, approach the Indian consulate or Indian High Commission for help. If their passports are seized, they don't have the knowledge to go and approach the Indian authorities to issue new passport and help, seek help to arrange flight ticket. Because of the low literacy rate, and also because of the certain conditions that they are in. And so therefore, ma'am, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm not talking about that. I didn't mean that. I said that notwithstanding the factor that you cannot totally, this phenomenon cannot wither away. There will be people who will be going, there will be unskilled labor force who will be going. I'm talking of some kind of negotiation, like as a member of Women's Commission, former Women's Commission, we took the case of women in red light areas, and we negotiated with the government, saying that a kind of a provident fund should be given to them so that their life, because we are talking about the dignity of the subjectivity. Therefore, I am talking about the dignity of the subject. Now, they might have gone because they are under exasperated about their poor conditions, and they will naturally seek employment other places. That's not the issue. The issue is that as a community, as a diaspora community, how would you try to negotiate? For instance, that's why I also gave an example that maybe you would talk to the employer to ask them to join their your diaspora meetings or cultural functions or whatever, despite the fact that the documents are with the employer. Let them be, but the participation of them that can be arranged, so that these people are not suffocated in their own poor condition, as well as the Tamil gentleman said that he was very happy to see the Hindi movies. So you must provide some outlet. There have to be some negotiation with the state and the diaspora, so that these people can also be accommodated. As we did, we have done that. We have gone to the villages, tried to find out the Devadasi women, and their children were not allowed in the mainstream schools. So we negotiated with the government. So I'm talking about this negotiation. That's what.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying. But what I'm also saying is coming to that point, that negotiation becomes very difficult because of the fact that this is a kind of employment in the context of Northeast girls, which comes under the criminal economy, and also not the normal kind of economy. And I want to clarify.
You have to decriminalize. We asked the government to decriminalize the profession. You have to, because the prostitution was a criminalized thing. We asked the government to say that, to make it possible to decriminalize the profession and recognize the profession as a profession. It's a profession. That's all. You will have to think on those lines.
Yeah, there are two.
That's just a request. It's just a request to you.
I get your point, ma'am. There are two groups of feminists here. One is the abolitionist feminist approach.
I know.
The other is the regulationist. The regulationist feminist approach is to make this work legal, and that work of these women should be given dignity and respect. Whereas the abolitionist feminist approach is to let the woman go out of this work and get new skills, vocational skills, get
women's
movement, and get empowered. Now, ma'am, the issue here is that the local traffickers are, not constantly in touch with the traffickers or job recruiting agents, and it becomes an extremely difficult task for them. And the government has to zoom in to rescue the girls. Today, there are hundreds of girls from the Northeast who are stranded in Singapore for more than a decade. And I just interviewed some of them recently who said that these girls, they don't want to come back because of social stigma. They are ashamed of the traumatic experience that they have gone through, and they themselves feel stigmatized. They don't want to come back home. They want to be there. They feel that fate has left them. So I do agree your point that, there should be a negotiation, but then it's a Herculean task when it becomes.
It is. I have been in
international migration.
Yes, ma'am.
Girls from here to Malaysia, then Malaysia to Singapore, then from Singapore to Dubai, or Dubai to Bangkok. So it becomes a kind of transnational issue.
That is why I said, yes, as commission member, we have all data. I know it is Herculean task. I know that, and we know that. But what is that we have to go out of our boxes and try. And it is difficult. But just because it is difficult, it is not impossible.
Yeah.
It might take time, but it is difficult. And as a diaspora, there can be a collective effort on the diaspora to take that into.
Yeah. I'm hopeful that in next few years, things will improve, because the Anti-Human Trafficking Bill of 2021 has been approved in the Lok Sabha, but it is yet to become a law. And now with that new law, the girls and men included who are taken abroad will come under the jurisdiction of Indian law. So hopefully, they will get justice. They will get their dignity back, and that, they will get compensation also under this new law, because the new law is framed with voices from the civil society, NGOs, women pressure groups, and experts. Yes. So it's a very comprehensive law. I have gone through that law. So I think with this note, thank you, Dr. Gautam.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we live in a time where sovereignty is questioned, and this is something very, very important issue. And this discussion actually invites us to have more engagement, particularly the question of decriminalization of prostitution. Particularly in Australia, there are many migrants who went to Australia. They have their different laws. So it is a kind of such kind of crime cannot be simply viewed through a legal framework, since this phenomena through time and space begets various social, historical, and socio-political contexts. It was really
I want
very...
to add, with your permission, that if you allow me, I also feel that if the Indian diasporic ethnic communities can come in and, try to help unskilled workers or semi-skilled worker in their host country, identify those communities, that will be of great help.
That's what I had said. That is what I was saying. Anyway, thank you.
That is something, as Meera madam said, it is difficult, but not impossible.
Yeah.
That consciousness is required, and maybe India can lead that sort of movement, which can be a reference model for many countries where there is a serious issue of trafficking, particularly South Asia, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. So thank you so much. And on behalf of Gandhian School of Democracy and Socialism, we are very grateful for today's very insightful and important discussion nurtured by GSDS and nurtured by Professor Ajailiu Niumai. We are very grateful for the presence of Professor Meera Chakravorty, Professor Gianluigi Abhijit Kanchaji, Minti Pradhanji, Dr. Nipur Sipra, and of course, Professor Anand Kumar. So thank you so much, and we look forward for your kind participation, engagement in our future dialogue. Thank you so much. Thank you.